Hey guys, MrPokke here, back with another video, and welcome back to Pokke's Classroom. This time we are going to be talking about Yinlin's pre-release analysis, and without further ado, let's get into today's content. Subscribe! Alright, so Yinlin. This is gonna be a little bit strange compared to Honkai Star Rail, because for Wuthering Waves, there hasn't been test server and there hasn't been like dreams and there hasn't been any teasers, at least from the official site, regarding any changes or updates to Yinlin's live version kit. So everything that you guys are going to be seeing here, they're going to be mainly taken from the CBT tree. Keep in mind that it will probably be subjected to change by a little bit, and as a result, I'm not exactly going to go into very in-depth like what's the rotation kind of stuff. I'm just going to wait for the actual units release before we cover the nitty-gritty, right? So today is a little bit more of a generalized, easier to follow content and serves to be like a additional perspective, so that my viewers, such as yourself, you guys can gain just another sight as to how you should be building Yinlin, what team should be using Yinlin, and just overall food for thought, right? Basically a food for thought, right? At the end of the day, Wuthering Waves, especially for this game, and I've mentioned this for like almost every single one of my Wuthering Waves guys, is that it is comfort overall. So unlike Honkai Star Rail, where it is very easy as a game to achieve your highest damage output, you literally have 3 buttons to press, and there's no time frame, there's no like QTE, you're not time sensitive. In Wuthering Waves, comfort above all, similar to a monster hunter weapon class, right? You need real-time input to the right rotation and setups, and the fights, they're always changing, what environment, what bosses, what mobs, your dodges, your parries. So there's a lot of different factors. So a unit's theoretical highest damage, like on cheats, they're always gonna be not practical, or at least something that you wouldn't be able to consistently hit 99% of the time unless you're just a god tier player, right? So going on to the next part, her role. The very first question: is Yinlin a sub DPS or a main DPS, especially if you're gonna be pulling for Yinlin at a high idolin? The answer will always be sub DPS, because her damage output is considered as a burst damage output. After you cast her skill into the 4 enhanced attack or her ultimate, window of opportunity for you to deal damage is gone. Very similar to Calchero. If you don't have his ultimate and after you use his 3 skills, there is this cooldown where his damage falls off drastically. If you can think of an example, it's like if Calchero and Yinlin, they are like Z or Ribbons, they are the mid lanes. A main DPS, their role will be similar to a Vayne or a Jinx, right? As an AD carry, they'll have consistent damage output. And as a result, because of this downtime, it is very difficult to expect Yinlin to be permanently on the field, because during a downtime for her skills, she's not going to be doing as much damage, right? Second reason, punishment mark. Before we continue a little bit, I'll just briefly explain the skill once again. If you want to check out a little bit more in-depth version of a skill, you can check out my video right here about the CN's pooling opinion for Yinlin and Jian. She applies Sinner's Mark with her basic and ultimate. You attack with your enhanced attack to turn them into punishment mark, and you get this enhanced attack from this gauge at the bottom of the screen, right? You get this gauge. Over time, you gain this enhanced attack. Boom, you cast a heavy, and then it will evolve into punishment mark. So the difference between sinners and punishment is that sinner, it is only for Yinlin. Punishment mark, it will last even if you swap out Yinlin. So it is very clear that the devs, they already have the intention that Yinlin is not a character that's meant to be on the battlefield for the entire time. You want to swap her out into a secondary main DPS so that punishment mark, it will still be applied and deal a lot of damage even while she's off field, right? So that's gonna be, and last point, even at resonance chain 6, which is to say we get all the way to E6, you're gonna be like insane multipliers, and now therefore my Yinlin can be a main DPS. This thought is also not correct, because at least in CBT3, the way how Yinlin's idolins work or resonance chain is it doesn't change her damage structure. Her damage structure, you can see this little graph that I kind of drew up in like very sloppily. Pre R6, right? You deal not as much damage. So you cast a skill, cast or whatever, there's going to be a bit of downtime before you get your skill back. And then towards the end over here, you're going to get your ultimate, right? So between the skill and your ultimate, there's this downtime. She's not going to be dealing any damage. So the downtime is the place where you will want to swap into another unit to fill in the gaps, which is also why Calchero just works very, very well with Yinlin, because Calchero also has cooldown. So Calchero has a downtime, you slot in Yinlin, and then when Yinlin has a downtime, you start with Calchero, right? So that is gonna be her pre-R6. But the moment you get her R6 resonance change, it doesn't change the structure. Your downtime is still exactly the same. It's just that you inherently deal more damage with your skills, your combinations, as well as your ultimate, your punch mark. They all deal more damage, but there will always be this downtime for Yinlin, regardless if you have her resonance chain 6 or if she's at resonance chain 0, right? The damage structure will always be like this, and that's why her role, it will fundamentally never be a main DPS as long as this downtime exists, right? And honestly, there isn't really a need to force her to be a main DPS, because why? Because she's still dealing as much damage as you can possibly. You can literally swap her to like have a MC, Sanhua, Modern, like anyone else. Okay, I mean they're not great, but like literally anyone else, they will just make this downtime become much less inefficient if you want to force him to be a main DPS. So TLDR, role will always be a sub DPS. Okay, next. Alright, Echoes. The Thunder set or the Cloud set. So this is going to be based on CBD3. So the pros for Thunder is that you ultimately have a higher damage output. And Yinlin specifically, she deals a lot of damage by herself. The 2-piece electro damage bonus and the 5-piece additional 30%, they will affect her entire kit. It will affect her skill, it will affect her enhanced attack, it will affect her ultimate, it will also affect her punishment mark, right? Every single time when the lightning strikes the enemy, all these will be affected by the Thunder set. So overall, your damage is greatly increased, and in the end game, we should say maybe after a couple of months of farming, this will very likely be her best slot. Because unlike Honkai Star Rail, energy regeneration, it is a sub-stat available line, right? In Honkai Star Rail, you could only get ER from your singular rope. But that's not the case in wutheringwaves, because theoretically, you could quite literally get like 5 or even 6 lines of energy regeneration if you're really, really lucky to just gain so much ER to the point where you don't even need the cloud side anymore, right? So in the end game, I believe after you play this game for very, very long, you're gonna end up with a Thunder set, with a combination of ER, with crit and all that. Then that's most likely going to be Yinglin's best slot for like a pretty much the majority of the time, right? There is one downside to Thunder set, which is it is very resource inefficient. It is very time inefficient, because this will mean that your main DPS, ideally an electro unit, because you know Yinlin buffs electro damage as well as liberation damage. So your main DPS will also run a Thunder set. Now, if you're in this situation where you're both main DPS and sub DPS Yinlin is going to be running Thunder set, it means that you need 2 of those. You need 2 4 costs, 2 times 3 costs, and 2 times 1 cost, and they all need to be in the offensive main stats as well as crit rate, crit damage, because Yinlin herself, she also wants crit damage. She still wants to do a lot of damage by herself, right? So it can be very, very difficult to finish up this set of echoes in the early game, especially for Yinlin, when she literally wants not only just damage but also energy regeneration, since the ultimate is where majority of the damage comes in. Very, very inefficient, and that is gonna bring us to the alternative, and that is going to be the 5-piece cloud set. So the cloud set's benefit of Yinlin is that she has a much smoother rotation, which reduces the ultimate downtime, and the ultimate damage is a majority of where Yinlin's damage is coming from, even more than punishment mark, I would say, right? The multiplier of the ultimate is very, very strong, so it is quite important that Yinlin does have a certain degree of energy regeneration. Also, the 5-piece cloud set, you also can buff your main DPS even more, which works exceptionally well. Maybe not with Calchero yet, because as you guys have known, since CBD3, wutheringwaves has decided to nerf how character swapping works in this game, because if you were to swap out a character after an outro skill, or even your echo set, or even like your 5-piece set, right, the buffs are gone. So maybe not Calchero, because Calchero, he inherently also have a downtime that wants to be swapped out after you use his skill, his ultimate. If you don't have anything there for him, then he's not going to be doing damage. So in the future, if we have another 5-star electro DPS that doesn't need to be swapped out, that's going to work really, really well if we are going to get this into in the future, right? So that's going to be there. But of course, the downside to Cloud set is that it is going to ultimately lower Yinlin's personal damage output, because she lacks the electro bonus and she lacks the 30% buff. Also, it might even lead to excessive energy regeneration. If you hit it within this time, within this rotation, you hit it. It doesn't matter if you have 19.4%, 24.4%, 40%, as long as you hit it in like a 3-turn ultimate or like a 2-turn ultimate in Honkai Star terms, you will hit it. Same thing for Yinlin. If a rotation allows her to hit it at 170%, 160%, then you don't really need that much energy regeneration. So there might be a little bit of a wastage in that department. In summary, Cloud set, it is very, very, very efficient farm, because echoes in this game, they can be swapped. That's right. So theoretically speaking, in the end game, you pretty much only need 5 sets of echoes. 3 sets of different main DPS echoes for your main DPS element. For example, 1 set of 5-piece thundering for your Calchero, 1 set of 5-piece fusion for your encore, and 1 set of 5-piece arrow damage for Jiyan. Theoretically, right? You can't swap your units, but you can swap your echoes. Whereas your sub DPS, like your Yinlin, she can share a 5-piece cloud with Mortefi, she can share with Sanhua, she can share with Jianxing. So every single slot 2 DPS, they can all run this 5-piece cloud. So you technically would only need this one singular cloud set and everyone can run it. Same thing for your healer set, your 5-piece healer, your Verena on team 1, and then your Baija on team 2, and in the future they will release another healer. They can all run the same set. So from a resource perspective, it would be good to just get this cloud set up and ready to go. And once you get it up, you can quite literally just share it with everyone. And it is a very, very efficient use of your stamina. That being said, best in slot endgame, such as if you really, really want the highest possible damage for your Yinling, or rather your entire Electro team that's going to be running for one team, then Thunder 5-piece is probably going to be the endgame. But nobody's asking you to make the best in slot Thunder 5-piece like right now, right? It is something that you can just slowly work towards. But as of now, the cloud set is there. Right, your Mortefi is literally running it, your Sanhua is literally might as well just slap it onto Yinling and at least give her something going while you're still working on Dancer, right? So that is gonna be the TLDR for Yingling's echoes. Team for Yingling. Is Calchero needed? The short answer is just no. Calchero needs Yingling as his best in slot sub DPS or slot 2, right? But Yingling's best in slot 1, it will not be Calchero. And the keyword is will not. Maybe for now, this team is probably going to be dealing the highest amount of damage for now. But in the future, if they ever were to release a 5-star Electro, let's be real, it's going to happen. It's like a whole Yanqing versus Jinlu. It is going to happen. When that happens, there will definitely be a better fit with Yingling than Calchero. Whereas for Calchero, it is very unlikely that Wuthering Waves will release a Electro sub DPS to power creep Yingling. Do you guys see the opportunity cost here? Main reason, there has been very heavy nerfs on Calchero's damage and rotation since CBD3, and the most important nerf, the outro / echo / set buffs, it is all gone upon a unit swap. This was not a case in CBD3, where you maintained your buffs throughout the entire battle. So back then, CBD3's strongest team was, indubitably speaking, Yinling, Calchero, and Verena. That was the strongest team in CBD3 because all of the buffs, you literally had 100% uptime, and for every single time Calchero had no buffs, no attacks, was on cooldown, you just swap back into Yinling, and then Yinling used up her skills, you swap into Calchero. So there was literally no time, and that was the strongest team in CBD3. In fact, it was the only team, in my opinion, if I'm not wrong, that managed to clear the level 100 monkey in CBD3, right? But because of this change, this team is unfortunately going to take a very, very big hit. I believe the main reason, okay, this is just a theory, right? This is just a theory. Devs, they likely want to reduce the player's skill ceiling by making it a little bit more casual friendly. They don't really want the damage disparity to be too high, where if a player does not abuse like swap cancel or animation cancel, your damage is gonna fall off a cliff, right? I think they're trying to steer away from so much in-depth combat mechanics, so they try to lower the ceiling a little bit. So even if you don't swap cancel, you are not getting punished. In fact, they are doubling down by punishing players who swap cancel too often, because if you do that, you lose the buffs, right? So I believe that is one of the reasons. Oh, and also another reason, let's be real, guys. Calchero, if it doesn't get nerfed, why the hell would anyone pull for a 5-star Electro in the future? Let's just be real, alright? So the question to this is, if not Calchero, then who else? Yuanwu, back in CBT3, even in CBT3, performed really, really well with Yingling. There's this little yellow image you guys can see over here. It is, first of all, it is a sheet math, right? It is sheet math. It is based on perfect scenarios. In 20 seconds, what is the highest damage output? So in reality, this might not be the case. Wuthering Waves is not Honkai style, right? There's always going to be changes. But looking at this, the first team is going to be Calchero plus Yingling plus Verena, right? Naima is basically Verena. In 20 seconds, the combined multiplier of these 3 units was roughly at 12,012%. Whereas for the second team, running Yuanwu, Yinling, and Zhixia, the gun girl, the American gun girl, their multiplier was roughly 2,000% higher within the same 20-second time frame. Take that as you will. I think one main reason is just they ran triple offensive units with no supports. with no Verena. The way how Yuan works is he does very high vibration damage, which is basically toughness bar in this game. So this player found out that upon testing, because Yuan's vibration damage is so high, it often led to bosses being weakness broken faster. So you don't really feel the pressure of the boss hitting at you as aggressively compared to if you were to run a healer team and then you break the weakness bar at a slower pace. As a result, you ended up not really needing the heals that you would get from Verena, and because the boss broke faster, you can just deal more damage in this time frame. It's a little bit like sustain run me. What is there to sustain if the boss is already dead? If the boss is already broken, right? So that was kind of the situation. And also back in CBT 3, Yuan Wu's resonance tree, the resonance chain tree, it was 60% defense. But unfortunately, right now, it already got nerfed by like 2/3. It is now only 20%, right? So do take it with a pinch of salt. But back then, I'm just saying, Yuan Wu worked pretty well with Yinlin, and it is just a single example of how a DPS that's not Calchero can perform very, very well with Yinlin. And in the future, if we see like a 5-star variation, all that kind of stuff, then do not be surprised if Calchero is no longer Yinlin's best in slot main DPS. The way Yuan works, I've not played myself extensively. I've just read up a little bit and watched him. His kit is basically punching people to death with his basic attack. That's it. There's no DPS downtime. You just basically punch him to death with basic attack, and then you have ultimate, you cast your ultimate, and then you kind of save your skill save heavy just in case you get like hit or like knocked down. So there's a very constant damage output. There's no bursts. There's no window where you need to swap out to Yinlin and swap back into Yuan Wu because his damage is consistent. And if in the future we get a 5-star unit that can do a similar thing as Yuan Wu, but even better, that will very likely be Yinlin's best slot teammate, right? Also, Yuan Wu, he's a defense scaling unit, which means if you are going to be farming for your 5-piece electro set, now you can actually give Yuan Wu your defense main stats with crit ratio, and he's good to go. So he's not competing with Yinlin for the same main stats, if you will, right? So something to keep into consideration about, right? So that's going to be that for Yinlin's team. And jumping into one of our last portion is going to be the future portion, and this is just going to be food for thought for you, right? So usage of Yinlin in the overworld and wave content, it may be a little bit underwhelming because punishment mark, it reapplies quite slowly, right? It lasts for a long time. It lasts for 18 seconds if I'm not wrong. The thing is, it doesn't really refresh very fast. Think of it like Black Swan's Arcana. If the mobs just keep dying, especially if you don't have Black Swan's E2, it can take a while to get back to like full stacks again. So for wave content, Yinlin might not be that crazy. Between Jiyan and Yinlin, I can say for a fact, Jiyan will give players a much better overworld farming experience compared to Yinlin because of the grouping and the fun button and all that kind of stuff. So if you're just thinking about overworld or like mob content where that's a lot of mobs, Jiyan is gonna be great, right? Jiyan is gonna be great. Anyways, best in slot main DPS that I mentioned just now, it is probably not yet arrived. It is definitely not yet arrived. We're just gonna have to wait and see a little bit. Future 5-star electro DPS with no damage downtime / consistent uptime is gonna be better than a burst damage main DPS. Calchero got nerfed so that the future 5-star electro can fly. So we're just gonna have to wait and see. But for now, definitely, if you already have a Calchero, it is gonna be one of the strongest teammates with Yinlin, bar none, because there's basically no other option, right? So if you have him, feel free to raise him and use him, right? Applications goes beyond electro teams for Yinlin. I mentioned this a little bit for the CM pooling opinions, is that punishment mark, it can be applied by anyone, not just Calchero, not just Yuan Wu, anyone on the main DPS slot, or even your healers, as long as they attack, punishment mark can be applied. To 25% liberation deepen, because the other 20% is electro, right? It is still usable by units with a very high liberation multiplier, such as your Havoc Rover or your Chixia. So if you're going to be running them with Yinlin, this additional ultimate damage deepen is going to be quite good, right? It's going to be quite good. Do note that although you can run Yinlin with a team that is not electro, you kind of need to take a notice at the enemy's rest, because if you're going to be using this team against like Thundering Memphis or Tempest Memphis, they have very high electro rest, so your punishment mark damage or Yinlin's personal damage, it will get crippled. So ideally, you probably don't want to run this setup against an enemy with electro rest, because Yinlin herself does a lot of damage. So just something to keep in mind. And then the last portion, the energy requirement side will need further testing. So we can't really say exactly how much ER does Yinlin require yet. The rotation on CBD tree, it might be different from our current live testing. It also has no set answer because energy requirements in this game, it is very, very fluid. It is not just, okay, I get an ultimate in 3 turns because it depends on your dodge parries, it depends on your skill usage, it depends on how often you get hit. So it depends on a lot of things. So it's not exactly set, but we can have a rough gauge. So for example, for Motefi, you roughly need around 170% ER to pull off his more smooth combo, and then for Verena it's roughly 210%, right? So we do have a rough gauge. For Yinlin, we're just gonna have to wait and see and look at how much ER she's gonna need, and then we can determine if she runs a cloud set or thundering set on the cloud set, right? So with that, we have come to the end of our first Pokke's Classroom featuring Yinlin, right? TLDR is gonna be coming on 2 days, so hopefully my editor can get this out by tomorrow. You guys want to engage in further discussions on the Discord.gg for Pokke's videos, where we're very active community on Honkai style and Wuthering Waves on a daily basis. Want to check my stream test, Twitch.tv for I'll show you every day. Shady, I'll be up in the Discord. So that's all I have for today. All the best for your Yinlin pools, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.